A lot of people like to watch adult content, and it became more and more easy to get with the expansion of tubes. Nowadays, everyone can access pornographic videos, and I used to watch this type of film, but I became aware it wasn't good for your sexuality. Now the years have passed, and I almost completely stopped watching sexual videos. Moreover, I no longer masturbate to them. Ever. And I can tell you it was the greatest thing I ever did for my sexual life. In this podcast, I'm going to show you why porn is a libido killer and how my theory is actually backed up by scientific facts. First of all, let me emphasize movies are not reality. And when you are starting to discover yourself, you can mistake what you see on screen with what's supposed to happen when you're having sexual intercourse. The act of love has nothing to do with sex on screen, nothing to do with the sacred union of two souls through the vessel of their physical bodies. Porn is a performance. Actors are paying attention to the camera and to themselves. In short, they are giving away their intimacy so as to gain financial compensation. When you're making love, there is no bargaining, because it's an expression of the inner feelings two consenting adults are feeling for each other. When you watch porn, you start getting parasited with violent, hardcore images. You are not enjoying the moment, and you're comparing yourself to performers who are irrelevant since, as I said earlier, the act of love is never supposed to be a performance. The result of all of this is that you start to have difficulties achieving orgasm because your subconscious has absorbed tons of hypersexual materials and a cognitive dissonance is at play since making love has absolutely nothing to do with that. The expectations and the realities are night and day, but you don't realize that when you've never actually had sex with anyone. In many cases, porn is your first introduction to the pleasure of the flesh, hence why it's so influential. Porn truly messes up your brain's dopamine and changes how pleasure is perceived. Did you know that in 2002, only 2% of young men aged 18 to 40 had erectile dysfunctions? A decade later, in a new 2012 study, this number had spiked to between 14% and 28%. And nowadays, the number is probably way bigger than that, especially with the lockdown, with the democratization of smartphones, and with remote working. In this report I just mentioned, you can clearly see the growth in the access of porn created a shift that negatively impacted the sexuality of millions of men throughout the world. Personally, and like many of these individuals, I even had to take supplements such as maca so as to help me with my difficulties to keep an erection. Now I realize it would have been easier and cheaper to stop watching porn altogether. I know that we live in a hyper-permissive environment where morality has become more and more relative, but would you like your mother, your sister, or your daughter to be in the porn industry? If the answer is no, then you should stop watching porn, because the people you are watching also have a family and they probably wanted for them something less prejudiciable than selling themselves for money. Don't forget the shelf life of a porn movie is actually very short. It's not like a song or an album or a traditional film. You can listen or watch several times. What I'm trying to say is that all the sacrifices and all the dehumanization that is completely part of this industry are not even creating a thought-provoking, a life-changing piece of art that will transcend generations. You're better off reading or listening to an erotic story because at least your imagination will get spurred by it. When you think of it, the industrialization era of the 20th century has managed to reach human people even in their most intimate aspects, including their sexuality and what they are trading for it. Sometimes I do wonder if what is at stake with the porn industry is not deeper and more important than we realize. as if all these aggressive sexual scenes are just a pretext, a front for something else. The numbing of fantasies and eroticism, the degradation of the sexual energies between human beings, the glamorization of filmed sex work as a means to an end. Also, I think it helped making the transition with paying platforms such as OnlyFans, where everyone can become a porn star. And I think the history of the porn industry and its success shaped an whole generation, along with reality TV, of course, as to become more open to the idea of selling their body to people they don't know for money. To make that sacrifice, I think really it was instrumental in doing this. Remember that we live in a world where we can get addicted to things that didn't exist not that long ago. Most notably, a well-known technological device that can fit in the palm of your hand. Porn is a drug, and just like other drugs, it causes a spike of dopamine in people's body. Neurons still send this chemical in your brain even when the system shuts down. In other words, too much artificial pleasure lowers your propension to feel real sexual ecstasy. Try and keep that in mind when you're clicking on your next pornographic content.